All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for those tuning in at home for sticking around after our screening of Dilemma of Desire. Such a wonderful, important, fascinating, and timely documentary that we're so excited to have in the lineup this year. And I'm so grateful that I'm being joined by director Maria Finitzo and producer Cynthia Kane. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we love
Um,
Philadelphia. So
oh, that's good.
yeah, it's a great
Great.
city.
Thank you. So for those who just watched the film, if you had any questions that came to mind throughout, the Q&A box is open and ready for your questions, so please ask away. But I will kick us off. I'm really curious to hear, Maria, how this story sort of came to be for you. What was your process and what drew you to telling this story?
Well, most of my films that I've made have in one way or another been about the lives of girls and women throughout my career. And I was always very interested in the different ways that we struggle for autonomy over our lives and all of the different things that get in the way of us having autonomy over our lives. And so I think it was sort of inevitable that eventually I would look at how we are viewed as sexual beings in the world and how that connects to how we are seen as equal in the world. And I know that at the time I was looking for another subject for a film. I had a daughter and I think she was entering college. And I remember thinking that the landscape that she was living in, the young person's landscape was way more dangerous than when I had been her age. And I was struck by the fact that we sort of tell young women that they're free to behave however they want, when in fact they're not. That's not really true. And that if they do behave in the way they want with agency over their desire, then oftentimes they're shamed or criticized for it. And so I read a book called What Do Women Want? The Science of Female Sexual Desire by an author named Daniel Bergner. And the upshot of the book was he went around the country and interviewed scientists who were studying female sexual desire with women as subjects, which was in itself unusual. And the end of the book was women have as robust a sex drive as men. They're simply told lies about it to reinforce patriarchal structures. And this was a book that I think was published in 2012. So that was what was very interesting to me as the starting point for a film, which was why in 2012 do all of these old lies and mythology and tropes about women and sexual pleasure remain in place when they were supposed to have been wiped away in the 1960s with the sexual revolution. So that's kind of how it all began.
Mm-hmm.
And Cynthia, I'm curious to hear from you when you got involved in the process and how you came to be a part of it.
Well, it's a great question. I knew Maria's work, and then and we talked when I used to work at ITVS, which is a funding arm of public television, and I remember talking to you once, Maria, about a long time ago, giving feedback on something, and then
In the game.
yeah, in the game, it was in the game, and then fast forward. I was working, my next job was Al Jazeera America, and we commissioned a series called Hard Earned from Cartemplin Films. And each of the there were 6 storylines, and they were directed by different directors who were part of the Cartemplin collaborative. And Maria was one of them. And it was a fantastic project, a fantastic series. And I loved working with her. And she sent me the proposal, or very early proposal for Dilemma of Desire. And, Al Jazeera is a pretty progressive company, but it's still owned, by the Sheikh of Qatar, and it's a Muslim-owned company. So I thought, oh, this would be a rough kind of pitch up the ladder at work. So, but we kept in touch with it. And then when Al Jazeera America closed, that's when Maria asked me to come on board, and I didn't hesitate at all. I mean, I just, I was a very little girl during the feminist movement in the 60s and through the 70s. And, women have come a long way, but we feel such a long way to go. And I'm going to be grateful forever for working on this project. I learned so much, and it really changed my life,
That was actually going to be my next question, which was, I learned so much in watching this film. You know, I thought I had sort of like a basic understanding of things, and then I
We
was
all did, we all did, yeah.
right. So it just sort of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know, you were saying you learned so much. Was there anything like in particular that was very surprising that you learned, or in this
Well,
video?
you know, it's funny. I think we all have kind of laughed about this, but um, I had never really, I always, you know, I call it the clit, you know, or something, but I had never said clitoris. And it was really hard for me at first. Um, and then, you know, as Sophia Wallace she's so amazing, and she's more amazing in real life. You know, one of her laws is to say it over and over and over until you own it, you're comfortable. And I did that. And in fact, people have told me to stop. It's like, are you going to talk about the clitoris at dinner parties? Stop. But it's really important. And also that, you know, that the clitoris wasn't fully dissected until 1998. And that's, you know, that's how much, how little attention's been paid to women's bodies and their anatomy. And the fact that they still get it wrong in medical textbooks is shocking and unforgivable. I mean, that's for me.
Yeah, Maria, was there anything in particular that just sort of stood out to you in the learning process?
Well, when I was researching the film, I went to New York and met with Sophia Wallace. She was the first person that I brought on to the film as a subject. And she showed me a picture of the clitoris, the internal clitoris as well. And I was shocked that that's what an organ on my body looked like. And I had never actually seen a picture of it. And, you know, when you think about that and you think about the ramifications of that, and then you say, well, gee, what if we had textbooks that left out half the anatomy of the penis because we just didn't feel like putting it all in? The sort of shocking that that's still what's happening in college level textbooks. And it's even more shocking when you realize that it's not because they forgot to put it in or somebody dropped the pages on the way to the printers. It's purposefully left out. And then as a filmmaker, I say to myself, well, what's the purpose of leaving it out? Well, that's a lie of omission. And that's when you know, if you lie to somebody about the simple truth of their anatomy, then your whole way of looking at them is not equal, but rather that they're unworthy of even knowing the knowledge of their body. So that was a sort of a startling thing for me to come to grips with. And I was pretty old when I met Sophia Wallace, so I'd been around for a long time.
We have a couple of questions from the audience. So the first one is they're wondering sort of why the film didn't go into religion's role in suppressing female sexuality more. Or if there was a desire or like a clear intention to not do that.
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting question, but I think that in several of the stories, Jasmine's story, she talks about growing up as in a conservative Baptist household, Umia's story, and then Sophia Wallace talks about the role of Catholicism and what it does to women. So I think that there are those three ways that I sort of show how religion suppresses a natural part of our lives. And that felt to me like an adequate amount to deal with it because there are so many other ways as well, you know, whether it's politics or culture or medicine or academia. So I felt that there was sort of the right balance around the issue of religion.
Yeah, and I think that also Sophia creating the altar to the goddess and to the clitoris is a really important moment, but it's also an important metaphor. I know that there's an ancient symbol in Ireland called the Shelina, which when they brought the Catholic Church into Ireland, and that's when they created the whole sort of the story of the Virgin Mary and mother of Jesus, and she became much more important in the Catholic Church because they worshiped the goddess in Ireland at that time, you know, in ancient Ireland. And as a way to protest, the Irish would carve into Catholic churches, they'd carve this sort of a picture of a naked woman with her legs wrapped around her neck, exposing her, both her clitoris and her vagina to the world with a huge smile on her face. And it's, if you go into these ancient ruins, you can find these, that they're called Shelina gigs, and it's amazing. And I think it's really important. The church, many religions have suppressed women, and you know, I think it's such a beautiful moment when Sophia builds that altar, and very, very symbolic.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question is, the women we followed changed dramatically over the course of the film. How much time passed from day one through to the editing process?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, long time. I started filming in 2016, and then one of the things I like to do is after about 8 or 9 months of filming, I start editing. That helps me see what I have and then informs how I keep filming. So I filmed all the way from 2016 all the way through the end of 2019. Now, not every single day, but over a span of at least 3 years. And all of the women, you know, changed in a lot of different ways. And it was really a wonderful experience for all of us because we got to know each other better as we went along. But sometimes you don't really know what's going to happen. You don't know how things are going to go. And so it was really, it's been an incredible experience getting to know all of them.
How did you find, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I just was saying, and they and some, like Maria, she met Sophia, was one of the first, and different characters came into the film at different times. All of the younger women from Chicago came in, you know, somewhat later, because we had the sort of the, I'll just call them the woke women, sort of, that are activists, and we had that group of women, but then our executive producer, Gordon Quinn, suggested to us, maybe you wanted to see the struggle that, you know, ordinary women trying to make it, young women trying to make it in this world, what we go through. And I think it was a great choice. And Maria Finitzo is the only filmmaker I know that can deal with this number of characters in a film and still make it very comprehensive, and feel like you intimately know them at the end. It's a great gift.
I would have advice that I would say don't put more than 5 people in a film, and I put 9 in this film. So
no, but it is
There's
true. Something that really stood out to me was, you know, how comfortable and relaxed and totally vulnerable these women all became. And, you know, of course you have the professionals, and not to say that they didn't seem comfortable as well, but they're just sort of, I guess, more used to talking about it because it's their job or whatever. But some of these, you know, just day-to-day life experiences, that stuff, some of it like made me blush. Like, I'm not gonna lie, just because, you know, I have my own set of whatever as a woman, and I just so I so admire just how it just, I think, speaks to your approach as a filmmaker and getting to know these women, as you said.
Well, one of the things that is interesting to me is in the film, the interviews you see, I interviewed them several times over the course of my filming, but the majority of the interview is the first time I'd ever met these women. It was startling to me that they were so willing to share with me and a camera crew, right? You know, all of these personal and very intimate details of their life. And I think what that said to me was how eager we all are to have a space for conversations. And, you know, if I did anything, the people I worked with, we all sort of created what we hoped was a safe space that would allow women to talk about these issues. And that was what happened, you know. I mean, they never felt like I was gonna exploit them or trick them or try and get them to do something that would make them uncomfortable. That was never the atmosphere that was created.
Yeah, I think that really came across in the film. I mean, what was it like for you to make this film? You said you started in 2016. That's, you know, a big year for obvious reasons, and working on it for the past 4 years. What was that like, working on something so prevalent to what we're dealing with every single day.
Oh, man.
And that
Yeah.
landscape behind you.
Well, in 2012, I thought it was an interesting idea. When I filmed with Sophia Wallace, it was in the summer of 2016, and then
Yeah.
in November, the world had changed. And to me, it had changed in a profoundly horrible way. And so working on that became part of the urgency of getting the film done. I mean, Cynthia can tell you as well, we faced enormous obstacles in getting funding for the film. It was a hard film to pitch. People were afraid of the subject matter. If you talk about female pleasure, they immediately think you're talking about pornography. My being able to make the connection between owning the knowledge of your body and our equality was a hard connection for people to get. And so, Cynthia will tell you, but I think even though that was so difficult, the fact that we had a person in the White House who was setting the country back 1,000 years just made the film feel all that more urgent to do. And even though there were plenty of times when I'm sure Cynthia wanted to say, oh, let's just quit, we can't get this done. And I wanted to give up as well. We didn't, because of, I think this is a film that raises really important issues, and I hope a lot of people see it.
Yeah, it's funny because you tend to think that we live in this very progressive nation, and and I think everything, especially recently, has shown us, the last 4 years, but even through the pandemic and and just the systemic racism that we face in this country, and the gender issues, we're not progressive at all, and we're very conservative, and trying to pitch these films, trying to pitch to funders and financiers, and a couple said to me, even like, I can't say that word to my boss, and I'm like, you mean clitoris? And I sympathize, but why? That's a huge problem. That is an organ in a woman's body, and we should be proud of it. It's amazing. I mean, people are finally being able to say vagina, but vagina is, still, it's the sheath that, the penis enters, and it's, the clitoris is powerful for a woman. It's powerful for every female, born human being. And the fact that we live in this, veil of shame, it's wrong. That's wrong. And I have to say, I've worked on a lot of social justice and human rights films. I think that for me, this is the most important film I've ever worked on, because it is, we lie to ourselves, just, in saying that we're just so much further along than we think we are. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And having a sexual predator in the White House, shame on this country, really.
I'm taking a lot of heavy
abomination.
Yeah. But I do want to say, though, that I think something that I really admire about the film so much is that it is confronting these issues, and I did turn inwards, and I'm asking these questions, and I'm thinking about these things, and there is so much darkness, but it's such an enjoyable film. There are so many moments of real human connection, of humor, of just all of this great stuff. Was that a difficult balance to strike? Because I can imagine how desire to sort of lean into the everything's horrible can be tempting.
I'm a big fan of humor. I think you need it in documentary films, and I always wanted this film, the subject matter of this film, to be accessible and to invite an audience in, not frighten them away. And so while that deals with a lot of serious issues, right? Control of our bodies, rape culture, misogynistic culture, all of that stuff, there has to be a way of bringing people in a way that, first of all, gives them an opportunity to laugh and confront sort of the discomfort they have with it. And then I want it to be enjoyable. I want you to keep watching my film all the way to the end, which is the most empowering part. So I think because I had such amazing women in the film, the humor sort of arises you know, naturally within their telling the story. So going into a sex shop with Sunny and her friend Nadia, I didn't tell them to do anything. I was just there filming them. And it's a funny scene. You know, they're holding these vibrators, which are vibrating all over the place. Funny, right? It's funny. And so that's, you want it to have some humor. You really, really do. But I also knew I wanted to deal with issues which I thought were very important, because I think they're the most important. They're the most important ways that lying to us about our bodies is the first way women are controlled. And if that doesn't go away, then we'll never own the knowledge of our bodies and never feel safe in our bodies. And that's not a way to live your life. So the stakes are high, very high. It's not just about orgasms and whether I have one and my partner has one. It's about equality and the right for all bodies to have pleasure that they're capable of.
Yeah, and I think we so often forget, or maybe, you know, that sex is really, it's funny, it's playful, it's joyous, it's serious, it's moving, it's all these things. It's, you know, it takes you to the, you know, it takes you to these great, great highs. And if we each, if every, you know, it's like everyone is, as we say in the film, every human being should be entitled to all the pleasure they can possibly have. It's, if we all allowed ourselves that, if we all respected our bodies, we talked about them freely, it would be a very different world, very different. So I do think it's a pathway to equality.
That's all really hard to follow. I think, like, for me to follow up to that, because that was just both from both of you so well said, and I think that might be a pretty good ending place for us, because I just I so appreciate you taking the time. I really loved this movie, and I loved having it be a part of the festival, and this conversation has been really illuminating for me, and I'm also grateful to the audience who has tuned in and stuck around after the film to join us for this conversation, and thank you for the questions. So thank you both, Maria and Cynthia, so much for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.